Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Emily, and I am going to be your host tonight and present on behalf of the Mizzou Student Financial Aid Office on how to complete the FAFSA, the 2024-25 FAFSA, as well as maximize your financial aid. So let's get started. What we're going to cover tonight, we're going to talk about what the FAFSA is, how it can help you. We're going to go over the FAFSA completion dates, some basic financial aid concepts and how the FAFSA fits into that, as well as obviously going over preparing to complete the FAFSA, actually accessing it. And then we're going to have question and answer time at the end. So you are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A section in the chat. However, we are not going to answer them in the chat. We are going to try to answer as many questions at the end of the presentation that we can. If we don't get to all your questions, we're going to talk about other opportunities to get those answered, but we are going to get to as many as we possibly can. All right, so let's jump into it. So what is the FAFSA and how can it help you? The FAFSA the acronym stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. There are companies out there that will try to charge you a fee to help you complete the FAFSA. I really encourage you to not do that. If you really want help, please call a financial aid office of the institution that you're planning to attend. We will help you through the FAFSA every step of the way. You do not need to pay for that assistance. The FAFSA is really your first step to getting the most eligibility for financial aid to help you pay for college. There are several need-based financial aid programs from the federal government, from the state of Missouri. Mizzou uses the FAFSA for a lot of our financial aid programs, as well as there's external scholarship foundations that also look at this information to help award some of their scholarships and need-based grants. The FAFSA covers one academic year. So for Mizzou, and this could be different at different institutions, for Mizzou, that covers the fall, spring, and summer terms. And what the FAFSA does is it really evaluates the family's finances based upon 2-year-old tax data, as well as their current assets. The new FAFSA creates what's called the Student Aid Index, and we're going to talk about that here in the next slide and what goes into that. So a lot of the questions we're getting now are what factors actually go into calculating a family's need or a student's need on the FAFSA, which is ultimately what the Student Aid Index score is. And this little chart here, this spoken wheels, this basically, these are all the factors that are going into it. So you have family size, you have the student and the parent current assets, you have the student and the parent income from 2022. You have marital status. We're looking at the state of residency. And also, I think it's really important. This is a federal calculation. This is defined by federal law. So changes to this are very difficult. If you do have special circumstances, we'll talk about that. You can contact our office. But these are all of the factors that go into creating that student aid index score. And all of the information you put on the FAFSA is what is used to calculate that student aid index. All right, so why should you complete the FAFSA? Well, the FAFSA helps you maximize all of your financial aid eligibility and all of the options that you have. Not every single scholarship is based upon need, but a lot of them are. A lot of scholarships and grants look at the student's FAFSA score, that student aid index, and they award based upon that. So it's really important, or it provides you the best opportunity to maximize your financial aid opportunities. So like we already talked about, Mizzou, the state, private foundations, and of course the federal government use the FAFSA to evaluate your need-based aid. You have to fill out the FAFSA to apply for federal grants. And we want to call out, you also have to fill it out to get the federal loans. So even if you don't think that you're going to qualify for need-based aid, need-based grants or scholarships, we encourage families to go ahead and fill out the FAFSA anyway. If something were to happen and all of a sudden the money you thought you were going to be able to use to help you pay for your education is no longer available, that could be something where it's very stressful. If you already have the FAFSA completed, you don't have to endure the stress of trying to get the FAFSA done and deal with the situation that you're going through. So if an emergency happens, we always just encourage family. There's no harm in completing the FAFSA. It takes time, and it's taking even less time than it has historically with the new format. So the key FAFSA completion deadlines for Mizzou, this is a new change. We just announced this yesterday. We are still in the process of getting our website and all of our materials updated. But our FAFSA completion deadline will be April 1st, as will the state of Missouri for our need-based grant programs. So if you get your FAFSA completed by April 1st, now it has to be signed and completed and turned in by April 1st. That's really, really important. Now, if you don't get it in by April 1st and you still want to apply for other federal aid eligibility, you can still complete the FAFSA after that deadline, the April 1st deadline, all the way up through June 30th. That's the federal deadline for completing the FAFSA. We strongly encourage you to complete the FAFSA as soon as possible. We really need your information by March 1st if we're going to try to get you the most accurate financial aid package. And what we mean by package is our financial aid offer notification, all of your financial aid combined together. We really need that FAFSA information in order to do that, to make sure that we know everything that you're eligible for and we're combining all those aid programs together. So we really encourage you to get it in by March 1st at least, but really do it as soon as possible. That way, if you have questions or concerns or something comes up, you have time to still complete it and ask those questions. Okay, so we're going to go over some basic financial aid concepts so we understand fully how the FAFSA fits into calculating our need and our financial aid eligibility. So something that we're required to do by the Department of Education, really by the law, the federal law, is we're required to create what's called a cost of attendance. This is often called a student's budget, and it encompasses more than what a student is being charged by a university. So what we're trying to do with the cost of attendance is make sure you haven't forgot about other expenses that you might incur while you're attending Mizzou. So of course, the cost of attendance is going to have the things that we're billing you for. So your tuition and fees, your on-campus housing, if you have a meal plan, that's all going to be in the cost of attendance because those are your educational costs that you're being directly billed for. We call those direct costs. But some of the indirect costs that might vary by student, those are not paid directly to Mizzou. So books and supplies are going to be different depending on the student and the classes that they're in. If they're living in an off-campus apartment, their housing costs are going to be different. Their meal plan, they might not be on a meal plan, so they have different food expenses. And also there's personal and miscellaneous expenses. That could be toilet paper, toothpaste, clothing, transportation to and from your home, back and forth, from Mizzou back to your home. Those are all the things that sometimes students don't plan for or think of. And that's why we're required to create this bigger number that's called the cost of attendance. The cost of attendance also helps define your financial need. So how we go about calculating your financial need for the purposes of awarding need-based financial aid programs is we take that total cost of attendance, we subtract out the student aid index. That's the calculation, remember, that the FAFSA calculates with all the financial information that we get. And then we subtract out all of the financial aid, the gift aid that you're receiving. So any grants, scholarships, whether they're from the federal government, the state government, from Mizzou, from outside organizations, we subtract out all of those scholarships that you're receiving. And then that equals your unmet financial need. This is a federal definition, and it's the definition we use to determine your current financial need when it comes to financial aid. Now, what else is really important when it comes to cost of attendance is the maximum amount of financial aid a student can receive in total is up to the cost of attendance. So in this situation, in that previous calculation, we had the student aid index being subtracted by the cost of attendance. But for the maximum amount of aid, we take that out and we just subtract all of the financial aid a student is receiving from the cost of attendance, and that is your remaining aid eligibility. If you end up taking up loans all the way up to the cost of attendance, we can give you loans up to the COA, but you can't go over. Okay, so that is the basic concept of financial aid. And we do include the loans, and if you're qualify and take federal work study, that's also included in this calculation. Okay, so my best advice to you, this is one of my favorite slides because planning for college expenses, we talked about the cost of attendance where it has all those indirect costs that aren't what is directly billed to you. But really, what we encourage families to do, I mean, certainly you want to think about those indirect costs and you want to be aware of those so you're not caught off guard by how much it might cost to attend Mizzou for those additional costs. But the tuition and fees that you're being charged in what if you're living on campus, your housing and meal plan, and then subtracting out all of the gift aid that you're receiving. So again, all of those scholarships and grants from any entity, government, Mizzou, outside sources, that's really your out-of-pocket expenses. So if you don't have enough financial aid to cover your total bill, then you need to have a plan, whether it's through self-pay, working a little bit, getting on a payment plan, or potentially utilizing student loans to help you pay your remaining balance. And then, of course, any other living expenses or, again, those other indirect expenses that you might have as a student while you're at Mizzou. Financial aid packages. So we tend to use this terminology all the time in our world. So if you call our office and we start talking about your financial aid package has this or that, what we mean by that is all of the combination of all of the financial aid programs you have. So loans, scholarships, grants, federal work study, those things combined all make up your financial aid package. And we notify you about that financial aid package in a document called our financial aid offer notification, our aid offer notification. So those financial aid packages, they make up a variety of different types of aid, and all of the different types of financial aid programs that are out there, those all have terms and conditions. And I really encourage families and students to think about it from a standpoint of sometimes when you have coupons, you can't always use two coupons together on a single purchase. And financial aid programs work very similarly to that. So sometimes we don't know all of the financial aid programs that you're set to receive at the initial time we package you with aid. So if more financial aid comes in, if you get more scholarships, if you get more grants, or you decide to take out loans, it is possible we will have to adjust other financial aid that you're already receiving or that we've already notified you about. Because not every single coupon can be combined together or stacked together. So that's really important to know. If you have questions about that, or if you're seeking out other financial aid sources and you want to know if things can be combined, I strongly encourage you to call the financial aid office of the school you're attending and ask them those questions. We are happy to answer those about any financial aid program that one of our students is receiving. Okay, so the main event. Let's talk about preparing to complete the FAFSA. All right. So the FAFSA is new in 2024-25. It's a new format. There's a new law behind it in the calculation. If you've never completed a FAFSA before, don't worry about it being new. Just follow the instructions and get it completed. If you are a continuing student at Mizzou, it's going to be different. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those differences and things you guys need to be aware of as a continuing student. But the three main things that we need you to do in order to prepare to complete the FAFSA is start to think about who actually needs to contribute information to your FAFSA and collect information about them. We're going to go over this in more detail in a couple slides. But also, we want you to create an account with Federal Student Aid. You have to do this. This is called the FSA ID. Every individual who needs to contribute information on the FAFSA needs to create an FSA ID. You need to do this 3 business days prior to completing the FAFSA. Otherwise, it won't let you complete. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then the third thing is you want to gather some financial documents. And really, that's to ensure accuracy and you're able to complete the FAFSA, because not everybody can have their information pulled in from the federal government, the IRS. So we're going to talk about that here a little bit in more detail to help you out. So for number 1, who are your FAFSA contributors? So contributor is a new term on the 2024-25 FAFSA. A student is always going to be a contributor. They're always going to have to contribute information to the FAFSA. Other potential contributors for a student are a biological or adoptive parent, a parent spouse that could include a step parent, as well as a student's spouse if it's an independent student who's married. Consent and approval are required for all the tax information to be transferred into the FAFSA document from the IRS. If you do not consent as a parent or as a contributor to a student's FAFSA, you will not be eligible for aid. So that's really, really important. Another hot topic or another question we are starting to get a lot from our students and families are about, well, our grandparents or foster parents or siblings and aunts and uncles, are they considered contributors on my FAFSA? Well, the answer to that is unless they have legally adopted you, even if they've helped raise you or provided financial assistance, they are not considered contributors to your FAFSA. This is a flow chart. We're not going to go through every single example, but I wanted to provide this as a visual reference. And we'll just go through one example. So if you start over to the left, are your parents married to each other? If we go up and say the answer is yes, then we'll go to the answer of report both parents' information on the FAFSA. And then we go up again, and then we ask the question, were federal taxes filed jointly? If the answer to that is yes, only one parent needs to provide consent on the FAFSA. If the answer to that is no, then both parents would need to have FSA IDs, and they would both need to contribute information to the FAFSA and provide that consent. Don't stress out too much about identifying who your contributors are. If you are confused, there is a parent wizard on the FAFSA that will ask you questions. This is just something you can think about ahead of time. And if you have any doubt who your contributor might be, when in doubt, everybody complete an FSA ID because it takes 2 minutes to complete an FSA ID. But if you don't have that ready and you need to become a contributor on the FAFSA, it will delay you completing your FAFSA application. Okay, so once the student fills out the parent wizard on the FAFSA, they're going to have to invite their contributors to complete the FAFSA. And the information that they need of the contributor, you will need the full name, date of birth, social security number, and email address of that contributor in order to invite them to then come to the FAFSA and contribute information. It's really important. The word contributor means contribute information. And that's, it's a new terminology on this FAFSA, but you will see that on the document. And so we just want to make sure you're aware of that. And then once invited, the contributors will receive an email with a link to access their section of the FAFSA to go ahead and complete, and that'll be available within a limited time frame. If they don't do it within that time frame, the student will have to go back in and re-invite the contributor to come back in and complete that information. So, and just a reminder, everyone has to have their own FSA ID in order to complete the FAFSA and sign off on it. So the second big thing that you can do to prepare is to create an account or your FSA ID. So go to studentaid.gov if you've not already done so and complete that now. If you previously have completed a FAFSA, whether you're a continuing student, parent of a continuing student, or parent of a student who's already graduated and now you have another child coming through, you already probably have an FSA ID. We strongly encourage you to go and log in and make sure your password's up to date and everything's working with that FSA ID ahead of time. We have heard reports from people who have completed their FSA ID, and it has taken more than 3 days to get that FSA ID created. So that is something that's really simple and easy to do now. If you wait too long to do the FSA ID and we're approaching the deadline for the FAFSA and you're not able to create that FSA ID in time, you will not complete your FAFSA in time and you're potentially losing out on eligibility for aid. We don't want that to happen, so that's why we're emphasizing going ahead now and making sure that it's done. If you already have one, go ahead and check and make sure that your password's up to date and you can log in with no problem. How to do this, really quick screenshots. You create the account on the FSA ID on studentaid.gov. You click in the upper right-hand corner and there's a create account button. If you already have one, you go to the login section and it will take you to this page and you can either get started with setting up a new FSA ID or you can click on already have an account and log in to actually complete this process. Okay, so the third thing is to gather financial info and other documents. So again, reminder, each contributor has to have the name, date of birth, social security number, email address. And a reminder, all contributors have to consent on the FAFSA in order for the student to be eligible for federal student aid, but also for Mizzou need-based aid and for state aid. The FAFSA has to be completed with parental information or contributor information. Other helpful documents that you're going to want to gather to ensure completion: tax returns, records of any child support received, current balances of savings and checking accounts, both for the student and the parent, and net worth of investments, farms, and businesses. Okay, so preparing for financial questions on the FAFSA. So reminder, the FAFSA uses 2-year-old tax data. So we are going into the fall of 2024. We're subtracting 2, so that's tax year 2022. That's the data that we're using on the FAFSA. The FAFSA, though, also asks you other questions, and that's about your current status for your assets and your current status for your marital status on the day that you're completing the FAFSA. So there's a little bit of a difference there. If there's no change in the marital status from 2022, your tax information should be transferred automatically from the IRS, and it should be a pretty quick FAFSA completion. However, if there has been a change, and that's okay, there's a little bit more of a process that you have to follow. So we're starting from left to right of these boxes. The first box there, if you're recently divorced, separated, or widowed, then if you filed separately, then you're going to be able to pull in the individual's information from the IRS as is. It's not a problem. If you file jointly, there's going to be a little bit more work to do in determining tax information that only applies to the person that needs to contribute information on the FAFSA. So in that situation, you would subtract out a former spouse's tax return info and report only what applies to the contributor. If there's an item that is to be applied equally to both people, then you would report half of that total value for that individual contributor. So then going to the right, number 2, in the box with blue on the top, if you filed a joint tax return, but with a different spouse, then in that situation, you got to determine info that, again, only applies to the contributor. You're probably starting to see a theme here. We are trying to get at the FAFSA is trying to get at the information, the financial information for the person that needs to provide, for the people, the parents and potentially step parents that need to provide information on the FAFSA. So we subtract out the former spouse's tax return in the situation and report only what applies to the contributor. Again, if that item applies equally, you report half the value. If you are remarried to another person, you must also enter that new spouse's information separately as a contributor. Okay, in the third box to the right there, if you filed single and recently remarried or married initially, then as of the day you filed the FAFSA and you file a single 2022 tax return, your spouse is going to have to add in their financial information as a contributor. So you first complete all the questions in your section, and then the spouse would come in and complete the questions in their section. I know that's a lot of information. Again, the FAFSA is going to guide you through this a little bit and help you understand based upon that parent wizard being filled out and the answers that you put on the FAFSA. It will help you explain and input this information. It'll provide the boxes for you to input the information. So the other thing to note is a student is always who's married and not separated from their spouse will always need to list their current spouse as a contributor. Okay, so let's talk about accessing and completing the FAFSA. All right, so how to access and start the FAFSA. So you can go to FAFSA.gov and it's going to redirect you to studentaid.gov and then applying for aid in the FAFSA. The links are there for you if you want to type those in. Or you could Google FAFSA, but if you go to FAFSA.gov, it's going to get you there. And it's going to get you to the FAFSA form. Right now, the FAFSA, if the buttons are blue under the 2024-25 FAFSA form, that means you can start it or you can access an existing FAFSA that you started and saved information along the way. If you get to the site and there's a banner at the top and it says soft launch for form for maintenance, which we know that this is a challenge right now. That means the FAFSA is down for maintenance, and the Department of Education is working on that to get it back up. We know there's intermittent access right now. I would encourage everyone to follow Federal Student Aid on social media. They have been posting the different times that the FAFSA will be available. And so that's an opportunity to just kind of know when it's available and plan your time around completing it. But again, we've extended our deadline at Mizzou in order for you to complete that FAFSA to give you a little bit of wiggle room, because we know that families are stressed and students are stressed trying to get this FAFSA form done by a deadline when it's not always available. So please know that we're aware of that and we're taking measures to help alleviate that stress. But at the end of the day, keep trying. We have your back. We'll help you through the process as much as we can. Okay, so once you get into the FAFSA, you're going to get this page to log in. This is where you use your FSA ID login and your password that you've created. We recommend that students log in first and complete their section and then invite their parents to the FAFSA. Continuing students, in the red box for you, this is a question we are getting in our inbox right now. You cannot renew your FAFSA from previous years. Historically, you've been able to do that. Probably next year, you'll be able to do it with this new FAFSA. But the FAFSA is a completely new system. It's a completely new technical platform, and it's a completely new law, and the questions are different. So you cannot go in and renew your FAFSA. You have to start from the beginning, get with your parent and complete the FAFSA together. You can't just go in and renew it. We're getting that question a lot, so we wanted to call that out to you. All right, so once you log in, you're going to get this screen, and we would, whether you're the student or the parent, you would answer that question. We're going to go through as a student right now. So the student section, what to expect. So there's basically 5 sections that you're going to go through as the student, and these are what they are. You're going to need the intro, you're going to have some personal identifier questions, and then you're going to need to provide consent yourself for your financial information to be provided and pulled from the IRS if you've worked and filed taxes. So section 1, they're going to ask you personal circumstance questions. We're not going to go through all of the questions in each of this section because it's pretty easy. You just click on these sections, you answer the questions they're asking you, and it's no problem. But we just wanted to make you aware of what to expect when you go in and actually complete this application. The other thing we wanted to call out, you're going to get this under the personal circumstances, section 1, that why consent is so critical. So the FAFSA measures a family's ability to pay and not necessarily the willingness to pay. So that's a challenge, and we realize that's a challenge. If a parent or a contributor refuses to provide consent and that tax information can't be pulled in, then the student will only be available, like direct unsubsidized loans is all the student will be eligible for. So that's really important and why consent is so critical. The next stage is you're going to go into a parent wizard. Basically, the student's going to answer questions about their parent. Are the parents married to each other? If yes, then you hit continue and you move on to the next set of questions. Or if they're not, then you get more questions dropped in. It uses skip logic and it helps to minimize the number of questions. You answer all the rest of those questions, you hit continue and you move on. When you get done with all of your questions on your section as a student, then those questions are done. And then you need to invite your contributors to complete the FAFSA form. And this is the process for this is what it's going to look like for you when you go to do that. So again, you're going to need your first name, date of birth, the social security number, email address, and confirm that email address. If the email address is not the same as what the parent used to create the FSA ID, that's fine. This just needs to be an email address that they check, and so they can click on the invitation and go ahead and get access to the form. Student demographics, section 2. You do not, the student demographics do not in any way, shape, or form impact a student's aid eligibility. This is purely informational. The institution won't even see this information. This is something the Department of Education is collecting as part of this form, as part of the law. So this is not something that we will see or will impact aid, but it is a section on the FAFSA. We're not going to go through all the demographic questions. They're there They're very self-explanatory. You'll be fine filling those out. Then we get to the next section, section 3, and you can see at the top of each of these screenshots, you can see how it's like walking you through on a timeline, a bar graph there where the personal circumstances, demographics, financial, you can see the stages and what stage you're on and what you've completed. On this part, on the student financials, the student's going to get asked about their tax filing status and some other financial information. And then the other financial information is on this next page, the student assets. This is where they would have to input information about their check, the total amount in their cash savings and checking accounts, and as well as if the student's involved in any investments, they would have to input that information in here as well. In order for that button to be able to go to continue, if the answer is none or 0, you need to actually put a 0 in these fields. We've seen the button not go blue in order for the application to advance. Okay, section 4, this one's really simple. You're just adding the colleges. And by adding the colleges, that means you want the FAFSA information sent to the college that you might be attending. Okay, you can send up to 20 schools. Of course, we hope you're sending it to Mizzou and you're thinking about attending Mizzou. And if you are, Mizzou code is right there on the screen for you. If you don't have to remember the school code, you can search our institution and find us and select us and add us to your FAFSA. But it won't let you advance to the signature part unless you actually put at least one college in this section. Okay, so once you put the college in, you're going to go to a signature page. We'll look at the signature page in a second here, but once you're done signing it, then the student section's complete. It's really that simple. It is a much simpler, easier format than it has been in the past. The hard part is getting into the FAFSA right now, but once you're in, it is an easier application to complete, and we are experiencing a lot of positive feedback. We are definitely understanding there's a lot of frustration out there, but the people that have gotten in, we are hearing that some people it's only taking a half hour, 15 minutes to complete, and that's great news. That's not everybody, but we are hearing some of that positive feedback as well. So don't lose hope, I guess, is the moral of that story. But once the invite is sent, you can see the status here as a student on this page, and then from there, on the left-hand side of the screen here, that's the example email that a parent or a contributor is going to receive. And then from there, you can click through that email on Get Started and go to right into the FAFSA. You'll log in with your FSA ID and accept the invitation and then start answering the parent questions. If for some reason the link in the email is not working, the parent can go to FAFSA.gov themselves and actually log in, and it will have the activity. It'll have a to-do list for you, and you can go ahead and just go in that way. Okay, so here's an example of the page where you have to provide consent. We've already talked about this, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But again, if you don't provide consent as a contributor, the student will not be eligible for federal student aid, and then also won't be eligible for state aid and aid at Mizzou. So just keep that in mind, because that's really important. And for the parent section, it's only 3 sections. So you have a demographics section, you have a financials section, and you have a signature page after you sign off on that consent. So it is, again, a smaller application in terms of the number of questions and what you have to do. This is the bottom part of that consent page, and there's some frequently asked questions or information there for you to review if you have any concerns. But ultimately, down by where that star is, you have to hit that approve button if you want that eligibility for student aid for your student. Section 1, demographics. Again, we're not going to go over all of these, but I just wanted to give you an idea and show you so you know what to expect. You'll answer questions there. And then section 2, it'll go into the parents' financials. Again, they're going to ask about your tax filing status. And then in the upper right there, they're going to ask about your family size. So often families change, the size changes from the time they file the taxes to the current state. So it's perfectly fine if your family, for the number of people that you claimed on your taxes, if that's different than what's in your current family size, then you answer that question and it'll drop down to some more questions, and you can get that information to be more accurate on the FAFSA application. Because remember, family size impacts the total SAI calculation, so it's important to get that question correct. Okay, from there, the parent is going to go, or the contributor is going to go, and they are going to need input this financial information. So annual child support received, parental assets, again, total cash from savings, checking accounts, as well as net worth of investments, including real estate, and net worth of any businesses or investment farms that you have. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second to provide a little bit more detail and an example of what we're talking about with those investments. So if the answer is a negative number to any of these questions or none, then you need to put a 0 in that field in order to move on and have it be correct. Okay, so really quick, a little bit about the current net worth of investments. So in this, what you do in this situation, if you basically take the value of the investment and you deduct any debt from that value of the investment that you have against it. So for example, a rental property, if you have a mortgage on the loan for the rental property, then you subtract out what you owe on that mortgage, and that is the net worth of the rental property. If that value is negative, again, enter 0 into that field. And then just a reminder, information has to be entered based upon the day that you're completing the FAFSA for the net worth of the investments. And you're going to want to round to the nearest dollar. So we have an example down there in the bottom. So we say the investment property is $100,000. You owe $75,000 on the property. So the net worth of that investment that you would need to enter on the FAFSA is $25,000. If you have multiple investments, you have to add them all together and combine them and put them in the field on the FAFSA. So other examples of the net worth of investments that you need to think of that you might have are real estate. We talked about that, rental property, vacation homes, trust funds, money market, CDs. The list is there. One thing I want to call out, the very bottom bullet, if there are accounts designated for the student on the FAFSA benefit, like the education savings account, you do not have to include the balance for other siblings that might be in that account. That's a change from previous FAFSAs, so we just want to call that out because that might help clarify that for you when you're completing. Current net worth of business and investment farms. So if you have any size farm, any size business, you have to include the net worth of the value of that business minus any debts owed against them. So again, the FAFSA, next to each question, there's a little info button. You can click on that and get a lot more detail on these answers, but this is a really high level overview. And for the farms, you need to include any land, the value of any land, equipment, buildings, livestock, crops that are used in the production or sale of crops and or livestock. You need to include that in the net worth once you subtract out any debts owed against them. Now you want to exclude anything that with the homestead, where the family lives, the buildings or the crops or lands that the family uses solely for their consumption. It's not for profit on that piece of it and by the student and the family. So this is a slight change to the previous FAFSA. So this is, if you have questions about this, it's important to get those answered so you understand. But the FAFSA really guides you through it. And again, there's an info button that you can click on and get more details about what to include. Okay, so this is an example of a signature page. Both the student's going to have one of these and the parent. And there's a summary. And then you go down, you have to click that you are signing it. And then you have to hit that sign and submit button. We are experiencing people saving the FAFSA and not actually signing it and submitting it. So that is really important that you sign and submit it when you're completed with it. Okay, so from there, you're going to get a congratulations page. The FAFSA form is completed. And what happens next is the student and the parent. I think, so we are getting feedback that this is happening differently for different people. We don't know why. It's our understanding that an email is to be sent to the student. They will, in that email, it will provide the SAI and the potential eligibility for the federal Pell Grant. So an example of that email is to the right above my head there. And we have a red box and it's highlighted where the SAI would appear on that email. if they don't get that email, they can log back in. They should be able to see it. There are some glitches right now with the FAFSA. The Department of Ed is working through those. This information will be available to everyone at some point. If you're not able to see it now, the only thing I can advise is please be patient. And I know that they're working through it as quickly as they can. Okay, so in summary, prepare before starting the FAFSA. If you're nervous about it, take those 3 steps and prepare. Try to identify your contributors, create FSA IDs for anyone who you think might be a contributor, have them create an FSA ID, and then collect your financial documents. Try to complete the FAFSA as early as possible. We encourage you to complete it for sure by March 1st, but April 1st is Mizzou's new FAFSA deadline for this 2024-25 FAFSA cycle. All right. If you still have questions, especially if you have individual questions, because everybody's circumstances are different, don't wait. Next week, the week of action, we are doing so over 70 financial aid professionals across the state are volunteering our time in the evenings. We're going to be sitting in a Zoom room, and we are going to, anyone who wants to come in, drop into those Zoom rooms. We are going to put you in a breakout room with an individual financial aid advisor, counselor, professional, and they are going to help answer as many questions as they can. We know there are glitches. We know there are some challenges completing the FAFSA. We will be honest with you. We'll tell you what we know. We'll give you the best advice we know as of today, and we'll try to answer the questions as best we can or get you to the resources that will help you answer your questions. There are also in-person events throughout the state called FAFSA Frenzies. We have a link there that you can go to access where those events are happening. Maybe you prefer to go and be in person and get your questions answered. That's also a great opportunity as well. So what happens next then after you complete your FAFSA? Well, initial aid offer notifications, timing of those from Mizzou, we are estimating early April. Due to the timing of when we're getting information from the Department of Education, all of our systems have to be updated in order to receive the new FAFSA formula and get that information processed in our systems and put those financial aid packages together to get into those aid offer notifications to send out to you. That's going to take a little bit of time. And so we're estimating early April. So that is for incoming students. Continuing students are probably going to be a month after that, but we will provide updates to continuing students via their email and other platforms to make sure the word gets out on that for continuing students. Okay, so I know that there are some questions that have come in in the chat, and I know we have some folks monitoring that. So I'm going to, let's see, stop sharing. And I'm going to invite my colleagues, Cynthia and Jamie. Jamie and I are going to answer some questions, and then Cynthia is going to be our moderator, and she was watching those questions come in, and we are going to try to answer as many as we can up till 8 o'clock. So Cynthia, take it away.
Thank you, Emily. That was a great presentation, a lot of information. So we do have some questions coming in. I'm going to start with you, Emily, on this question. What happens if a contributor's link doesn't work to finish filing the FAFSA? What would a parent do, or a contributor?
Yeah, if it doesn't work, when you get that email and you're trying to click through on that link, we have heard that that's happening, that link's not working. Don't worry about it. Just go to FAFSA.gov, log in using your FSA ID. It should have an activity list of things that you can do, and you can click on that invitation right through FAFSA and get in and complete your section as the contributor or the parent.
Sounds great. All right, Jamie. What happens if I need to make a change to my FAFSA? And also, when will schools get my information?
Good question. Currently, we are being told that schools should start receiving FAFSAs by early February. And that is also the time frame that students should be able to go in and make changes to their FAFSA. So if you are needing to add another school code to your FAFSA, you should be able to do that starting in February.
Perfect. All right, Emily. When can I expect to hear from my school about my financial aid offer?
Yeah, So it's that early April timeframe for Mizzou. I think other schools will probably be in a similar timeframe. We all are under the same system update requirements and challenges. So your financial aid offices are working hard to get that information. We want to get it out to you as soon as possible. So we ask for your patience. If you do have questions, you're welcome to ask us, and we'll try to give you a best estimate. And we might have a tool in February that we're going to be able to give to students to help them estimate their financial aid as well. We're working on that right now, and we'll make sure that that gets sent out to everyone as soon as that's ready.
Perfect. And Emily, also, what will happen if I don't get my FAFSA in by the Mizzou deadline? Will I still be able to get financial aid?
So you'll still be able to get some financial aid. If you're eligible for federal programs, those are entitlements, and you're able to get those, especially the federal grants, and then you can still apply for and obtain loans. However, if you don't get your FAFSA in by April 1st, you will not be eligible for the state of Missouri need-based aid, and you will not be eligible for Mizzou need-based aid. So that's really critical, because Mizzou need-based aid, we have our Missouri Land Grant Program that for a Pell eligible student, that covers your full tuition to attend Mizzou. That's a really significant amount of money you'd be leaving on the table if you don't get your FAFSA in by April 1st. Also, we have our MU grant program that also helps cover unmet need for our students. So it's really important, again, to meet that deadline, act early, try to get it completed. If you're struggling to get it completed, reach out to us. Do not wait till the last minute. Do not wait till a week before April 1st, because there's a chance you won't have enough time to get it completed, and you could potentially miss out on maximizing your aid opportunities.
Perfect. And Jamie, so for work study, if I'm interested, how do I go about finding that out at my institution?
Yeah, so this is one of the changes on the FAFSA. In previous years, that has been a question on the FAFSA if you're interested in work study. So with this current new FAFSA, it is no longer a question, but you can definitely call the financial aid office starting late spring, sometime in that April and May timeframe, if you are interested in work study, and we can get you information on how to apply.
Perfect. So Emily had mentioned unusual circumstances. So if I have an unusual circumstance that prevents me from contacting my parent, or just that contacting them would cause a risk, and I have to answer yes to that, when can I start submitting documentation to the financial aid office?
Good question. We can start accepting that documentation sometime in February. And more than likely, we won't be able to review it until late March or early April. As Emily mentioned, of all the testing that we'll need to do on our end to make sure our system is up and running to be able to make those corrections on your FAFSA. This could cause a slight delay in receiving a financial aid notification from us. So if you did answer yes to that question, you submitted the documentation, you might not have a financial aid notification from us until mid to late April.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, please understand, again, we want to get information out to you as quickly as we can. We will be working on a tool to help you estimate. Because of the delays of the FAFSA and the information getting to us, that is putting us in a difficult situation to try to get the information out to you as quickly as we want to. However, we will get it out to you, so we do ask for your patience, but please go ahead in February, check in with us to submit that documentation. And again, because if you do have unusual circumstances or special circumstances, because we likely are not going to be able to get those initial aid offer notifications to you in that April timeframe, we will work with you to try to help you estimate what the financial aid package will be, so you can make a choice on affordability for Mizzou or any institution you're planning to attend.
Thanks, Emily. So you did mention special circumstances. So Jamie, what if my family's financial situation has changed, since 2022? How would I go about starting that process with the financial aid office, and when can I start turning in that documentation?
Unfortunately, this year for that documentation, we probably won't be able to start receiving that information until April. Just because of the delay. So you may receive an initial aid offer notification from us based on what was reported on the FAFSA. But just know when you submit after we review the information submitted for the special circumstances, and if it's approved, we would send out a new aid offer notification with that updated financial aid.
Perfect. Okay, so we had a few of these questions come in, Jamie. If we have one or more students in college and each of them will be filling out a FAFSA, do the parents need to have more than one FSA ID? And is it possible to fill out one and not the other?
Every contributor only needs one FSA ID, and that FSA ID will stick with you for life or until they decide to change it again. Each FAFSA will also need to have all contributors fill out their sections and sign and submit their information for each FAFSA. And then just remember that a FAFSA will need to be filled out every academic year.
Perfect. All right, Jamie, another one. How is child support reported on the FAFSA?
Child support paid is no longer reported on the FAFSA. Child support received will be reported on the FAFSA. It's as of the last calendar year from filling out the FAFSA. So tax information income is from 2022. But if you are filling out your FAFSA in 2024, then you would put the child support received in the year 2023.
Perfect. Thank you. So another question that's come in is, my student did not make enough money to file taxes in 2022. Do we need to try to calculate earnings for that year and report it?
That's a good question. If the child did not make enough money to file taxes, then you would just mark no. I think it was slide 35. Yeah, you brought it up. You would just mark no to filing a tax return for 2022, and you do not need to put income earned from your student.
Perfect. I think Emily kind of covered it, but let's just go over it again. How do you report students' 529 plans? Do we report that both on the student and the parent? Where do we report that at?
Those 529 plans would just be reported under the parent net worth. And it would just be the amount that you have for the student on that FAFSA.
Great. Okay. So we see a lot of questions that have more individual responses and obviously or require more individual based responses. So I think what we would encourage you to do is come to next week, January 8th through 11th in the evenings, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Again, over 70 financial aid professionals are volunteering their time to try to help answer questions that are more individual based. We'll put you in a breakout room with a financial aid professional and they'll be able to answer your questions. So we're running out of the more general questions to answer, unfortunately, but we want to help you. We have your backs. We know this process is confusing. We really want to help you. So please come and visit us next week in the Zoom rooms in the evening, that week of action Zoom help. Information about that can be found on our website under applying for aid. Also, I wanted to remind everybody that this presentation is being recorded. So if you missed something, if you want to go back and view it again or go over it again and something we talked about, you're going to have access to do that. And we'll make sure that that recording gets out to everyone that registered, and we're going to post it on our website. So it's available to everyone to view. So I just want to thank you all for attending and joining us tonight. Again, all we can tell you is have patience. We know that it's frustrating right now getting access to the FAFSA, but Mizzou has your back, and whether you're attending Mizzou or not, we're willing to help you get through the process and complete the FAFSA. So thank you for joining us. If you have any other questions individually or other about the FAFSA, don't hesitate to come next week or call your financial aid office. Call our office or call the financial aid office of the university you plan to attend, and everyone, every one of us that work in this profession is willing to help you. And that's one of our main goals and why we do what we do. So thank you again for attending, and go Tigers.